Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of a 3-part special edition with one of our really good friends, Adri Miller-Heckman, founder at Femex Advisor. Adri, what are we doing today?
Well, we're going to switch it up a little bit, Matt. Instead of you interviewing me, I'm going to interview you. And I want you to think of me as if I was a female financial advisor looking into doing podcasts. Because I've talked to a lot of advisors and I've gotten a lot of questions. So Role play with me here.
Bring it on. Let's go.
All right. So, Matt, I like the idea of podcasting. I know women love it. They love listening to these things, and I really want to inspire women. But the whole concept makes me nervous. I get a little anxious. I feel a little overwhelmed, and I really don't know where to start.
Well, we would like to really start by finding out a little bit more about who you are and what makes you unique and different. That way, I think once you start feeling yourself talk through really what makes you, you're going to see that it's easier to have these sorts of podcasty conversations. So, Adri, just tell me about you. Tell me a little bit about your story in financial services.
Well, my real focus, I have a website that's all about women, and my real emphasis is about engaging and empowering women. And so I like to help them understand how easy it is to really manage your money. And I want it to be fun for them. So my thought is, I've hosted seminars for years, but I want to add another layer of credibility. And I think I could do that with podcasts.
Tell me about your educational events before I answer that question, because you'll understand the method to my madness here in just a minute.
So I typically do 2 different events, and I do it consistently. I host the Savvy Women Invest on Purpose, and this is really designed for every woman and to inspire her to get more involved. And then I host my Life by Design workshop. And this is more to take those women who are a little bit more committed, and they actually go through a workshop with me. So I take them through the process. And the next step from there is obviously they've done a lot of the pre-work to becoming my client. Now they schedule an appointment and become my client.
Well, how do the women feel when they leave those workshops? What is your goal?
Totally inspired and more confident. I mean, the chatter, the conversations, it's almost like I have to control them.
Well, I've got really good news for you. Podcasting is going to be easier for you than with a lot of other people who come our way. And the reason why is you already have at least a year's worth of content.
Really?
Well, if you have 2 different workshops, and especially your second workshop, which is much more involved, where they're actually doing work, we have an enormous amount of topics right there. And what we do with the podcast is we just take what you're already good at talking about, what you're already passionate about, what you already know the outcome is, which is to inspire people. And we use that to build out a framework for 12 months of podcasting.
Wow. So what you're saying is I'm going to take the content that I've been using in the seminars and break it into smaller pieces?
Absolutely. And luckily, you've practiced this over and over again. So your overall level of confidence in the topic should be pretty high. Okay.
So I thought with podcasts, you're supposed to invite people and interview them like you do.
Absolutely. And that is a great way to increase the listenership to your podcast. It's a great way to deepen your influence, existing influence with your centers of influence. And we can absolutely incorporate that into those workshop topics. What you do is you bring in somebody who can add content, add expertise, or add an alternative insight to each of those topics that you have with your workshops.
Okay, so I like this idea, right? This makes me feel a lot better. If I'm hosting a workshop, or I've got 2 workshops, I now have 12 months of content, 12 podcast contents, right? So my concern was, if I have to find somebody to interview every month, it gave me anxiety. What if I can't find somebody and I have to do a podcast? But what you're telling me is I can fill in those gaps with my own material.
I want you to preload all of your information before we even get a guest on. So let me back up with our process just a little bit, because if I threw you to the wolves right out of the gate, Adri, and said, hey, you need to start interviewing people without really truly being comfortable with this medium, you're not going to shine in the way that we want you to shine and have the connection and the impact with your guests. So what we do is, we'll take your workshops, and you're going to do 2 podcasts a month, just so you know. So that's going to be we have found that is the appropriate frequency. So we're going to take 12 podcasts. Those are going to be your first 6 months. And we're going to get you to practice being on the other side of the mic with one of our voice talents. So it'll either be, we have Eric, we've got a couple of other people who are in the wings, who will actually interview and ask you questions so you can start getting more comfortable with the medium. And then that's when we're already in those 6 months, we're already starting to look at what guests we should start inviting. And surprisingly enough, or not surprisingly enough, we have a whole system in process on how you get those guests, 1, prepared, 2, excited, and 3, to share all of your information after the podcast is done.
So I like this concept, and I'll tell you why. Because if I'm doing some of the presentations or the podcast on my own with my content, it really is making me appear as an expert. But if I intersperse interviews with other professionals, I get to do a joint marketing with them, right?
Yeah, it's super, super powerful. It's unbelievable, 1, how many people will say yes to you to be a guest on the show, and 2, how excited they're going to be. Because if you follow our system and our format, it's not going to necessarily be a flawless podcast, because there are very few of those out there, but it's going to, once again, excite them, inspire them, not only to get their message out, but also help you get your message out.
And the flawless piece, right? One of the things I teach my financial advisors is it's better when you make mistakes. It makes you real. It makes it's not supposed to be perfect, right? So, okay. So I like the concept. I'm feeling better because I don't have to have 50 million people to interview. And I think that process is going to force me out to network. But what if I have a guest on that's lousy?
Well, unfortunately, that's happened to me a couple of times.
What do you look for?
Well, that's a wonderful question. So one of the things that I look for is somebody that I already know just from watching their. So let's go to the networking event, right? A lot of financial services professionals, Adri, don't do networking because either they think they're above it or they don't enjoy it. This gives you a whole nother reason to start networking. And it's so much more fun when you can walk up to somebody and say, Mr. CEO that I've always wanted to do business with because he's loaded or she's loaded. And we know that they are, an ideal client or prospect for us as a financial services professional. We all of a sudden make the entire conversation about them. So Adri, now I know that you're a financial advisor. I'm going to have you switch gears, and now you're a high-powered CEO, which, by the way, I know you are that already. And so Adri, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Matt Haller, and I've been really excited to meet you.
Really?
I'll tell you why, and this is going to sound really nerdy, but I've followed, what you have done in our community for a long time. And I was wondering, have you ever been a guest on somebody's podcast locally?
Actually, no.
Have you ever been behind a microphone? Is that something that interests you at all? Being able to have somebody ask you questions about, who you are, what you've done, and what makes you such a powerful person within our community?
Yeah, years ago I was on the radio, but yeah, I'm very comfortable with that.
And podcasting is a little different, Adri. And one of the reasons why we use podcasting in our business is because it's very casual. It's you and I sitting down, just having a conversation really about a topic that you're probably pretty good at, which is you.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's take it to another level.
Okay.
When I coach financial advisors and I talk to them about reaching out to centers of influence.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that they understand that there are some centers of influence that do not fit.
Yes.
So just because you're meeting somebody high-powered, doesn't mean they're going to be good. And so, especially when you're marketing to women, I will have them reach out to the center of influence, ask them a few questions about their business. And then I will say, just out of curiosity, how are you supporting women? Or how many of your clients tend to be women? I won't tell them I focus on women until I ask that question. And then I'll say, it's interesting you say that. And you're asking questions. What do you see are the 3 biggest challenges women face in your area, in your field? Then I get a chance to see, would this be a good center of influence to share the stage with in a seminar or event? 1, are they passionate about women, or could they care less? 2, can they articulate what they do, and are they insightful enough to bring value?
Mm-hmm. Well, and how they answer the question, right? Their tonality, their pace, their pentameter, their inflection, their passion, all of that's going to come through by asking those. We refer to those as feeder questions, right? That's what we talk about in the podcast world. I'm going to feed you some questions, see how you answer those questions. And if you answer them well, then the probability of you being a good guest on the podcast is high. Plus, I have already made a very deep, visceral connection with them, highlighting what makes me, you in this situation, unique and different.
Yep. And the more you interact with them, the more they're thinking about, and you're sharing about your practice. So if you were one of my advisors, you'd say, it's interesting. Let me tell you why I focus on women. I'd share my story. I'd share my compelling message. And again, so what I love about this is what you're saying, Matt, is hosting a podcast gives you a real purpose for networking. You're not just going out there and saying, hi, what's your name?
Right.
You and I know for me, I need a purpose. And once I know what I need to say and what my purpose is, I'm on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to go out networking and just socialize, that's not my thing.
Well, and the other thing too, sorry to interrupt, but the other thing too is nobody wants to hear your elevator speech over and over and over again, right? And especially if your elevator speech is, I'm a certified financial planner with Edward Jones, and my job is to help you retire smoothly. Like,
I make your dreams come true.
Yeah, I know. Oh dear Jesus. Yeah, and so, but if you if you attack networking in a different way, like we talk about here, how much more fun is it to go up and say, hey, I would love to flip and interview you on a podcast. Yeah. Or you're sitting across the room and you see somebody who's just really animated, you know who they are, and right there, bam, I know from their nonverbals, from their hand gestures, from their facial expressions that they're probably going to be a great, enjoyable, powerful podcast guest. And you can even use that as your networking icebreaker. Hey, you know what? I've been sitting over here talking to all these really boring people, and I've watched you, and I wanted to know, do you podcast already? I just flat out ask them, do you podcast already? And she says, no, I don't. You probably would be really good at it. I host a local, and there's some very specific word choices I have here. I host a local podcast that helps our listeners, right? So I'm going to be vague there. Our listeners learn more about really powerful, beneficial people within the community. And I would love to have the opportunity to interview you. I mean,
okay, so I'm going to put my coaching hat on here for a second.
Bring it on.
Go back to a financial advisor.
Yeah, good.
One of the things that really annoys me is when I had a client that was doing a podcast. There was no rhyme or reason for the podcast. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So even with events and everything they do through my coaching program, we will have a word, like if they say, I run a confident wealth program for women. Okay, everything you do needs to be about building their confidence.
Yeah.
Right? And so you really can make a simple agenda like, who are you? What is your expertise? What are the 3 most, you need to know ahead of time and coach these people. Here's what I'm going to be asking you. And this is where I want to go with this, right? So for example, who are you and what do you do? how did your knowledge, say, about money or lack of knowledge impact your success? This is if you're interviewing a female business owner, because that's a lot of the women that are focusing on women are interviewing successful women. But what are you trying to teach me? And the third question would be, how did finances play a role in a positive or negative way with your success? And what are 3 things you think women should walk away understanding about success? Done. You do it every single time. So I know every time I get on your podcast, I'm going to walk away with, how did finance affect me? And what are the 3 things I need to focus on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going back to the financial advisor.
Okay.
So I love this. I'm in, but I like to be prepared for things. So what can I do before I contract with you to feel more comfortable that I'm ready?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things. First off, I think you should listen to some podcasts. And I'm more than happy to share some of our existing clients with you who might podcast in a way that's similar to where you might be going. But the other thing I'd like for you to do is I'd just like for you to grab a piece of paper right now, and I want you to write down your 5 best clients. So I would
your 5 best what?
5 best clients. Your 5 best clients. Now, this isn't assets under management best clients. These are people you absolutely freaking love to work with. Okay. So after you get that done, I want you to write after that the beginning of the story of how you met and how you helped them. So after you write that down, you're going to see 1, a common thread, and 2, what you're going to see is you already have a bevy of amazing thought leadership that's inside your brain, and all podcasting does with a host specifically is to help pull that out of you. Our job is to help you look smart, tell great stories, and communicate what truly makes you unique and different. You can do that right now. You've already done it on the phone. What is the hesitation to just be in front of a microphone and have a different medium?
Is that a question, or you just...
Kind of. It could be a question. It could be a statement. It depends on how you take that.
Yeah, I like that. Thinking of your 5 top clients, I think I would also think about... I think I would start building a list of professionals, just brain dump. Mm-hmm. People I know in the community, clients.
Yeah.
That I admire that I could interview. So,
Adri, the other piece of it too, and you, I would have probably tried to turn this a smidge, but I really wanted to answer your direct question, is this is all part of our podcast coaching. So the first month that we work together, we have an enormous amount of stuff that we do. We build your podcast channel. We buy you the equipment. We help you set up the equipment. We do all of our sound testing. We create a professional intro and outro. And all of that stuff is all part of our package. But the other big component of it is the educational component of it, where when you leave the podcast coaching call, you're going to have 6 months of podcast topics fleshed out. We use a program called MindMeister, which is a visualization tool to help you pull ideas out. And by the end, like the first person I did this with, we had a whole year of podcast topics within 30 minutes. And they were like, oh my God, I can't believe it was that easy to come up with topics. And then what we do is before we actually hit record, we go over it very quickly. Okay, so this is what you're going to talk about today. Here are the questions I'm going to ask. Are you ready? Did you warm up? We go through some of the other podcast coaching things. But our goal really is to make this as easy for a financial services professional as possible and fun. I know that I don't know how many people in financial services who provide services to financial advisors have fun as a core component. That actually happens to be one of our value pillars at Top Advisor Marketing. I want you to get off the podcast like today. I want you to get off this podcast with me right now. And I want you to say, that was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. And we want the same thing to happen with our clients. We want them to get off the podcast and say, okay, you know what, man, I really got my message out. I had a good time. I had really good energy. And I feel like I accomplished something.
So what I'm hearing is once I sign up with you, you're going to guide me through the whole process.
Absolutely. I mean,
you're going to handle the technical.
Yep.
You're going to set me up. You're going to help teach me. You're going to get me comfortable with podcasting. What's my job? To find people and to interview?
So I love that question. And that makes me really happy that you just asked that. Now, I just want our listeners to know I did not feed her that question. That's a great question because it's 2 hours a month. Okay. So if you use our full system, which is our podcasting system and social media system, it's 2 hours a month. And then we do absolutely everything else for you. So in those 2 hours, here's what's going to happen. We're going to record 2 26-minute podcasts. You're going to read and review your social media calendars for compliance approval. And we're also going to, at the end of every podcast, brainstorm what's going to happen next and have you have homework, whether that is to find your guest or all of those sorts of things. So we have tried to make it, because we know that all of you are crazy busy. And whether you're a financial advisor or somebody who provides services like you, Adri, to financial advisors, we want to make it so that this is a great use of your time and money. I think we priced it very, very well. And I also think that your confidence in the deliverables only increases because as we continue to get to know your voice, the social media posts get even more engaging. They're even more you. And with those 2 podcasts, we turn them into 100 social media posts for you. And we have a saying here, you were talking about theme. Our company, our theme is pleasing the algorithm. So everything we do from a branding perspective, from a podcasting perspective, from a social media perspective, is all to please the big 3 algorithms, which would be Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
So are you talking about you help me market this on social media?
Absolutely. We take your podcast, your thought leadership, and turn it into personalized, custom curated posts for you using your ideas and your words. It's not a repurposed article. So do you
post it or do I have to post it?
We post absolutely everything after compliance approves it.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, I don't know if people really truly understand the gravity of that. I mean, making it so we put the social in social too. So part of what we try to do from your podcasts is to pull out what we know will be really engaging to your audience. And therefore they will comment, share, and like, which is what we want to have happen with your social media posts.
So what would you suggest? I'm in, but what would you suggest to be the minimum commitment time-wise? 6 months, 12 months?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It really depends on the engagement you have socially right now. So if you're killing it on social, we want you to do 6 months. Then we know you're going to be hooked. But it does take 6 months to really start getting momentum from podcasting. I mean, that's 12 podcasts in a can, and that's a season of podcasting. If you do not have a strong social media profile right now, then you need to be in for 12 months and know that you're going to do, what is that? A whopping 24 hours a year of work with Top Advisor Marketing.
You know what I like about this? Now, granted, the events that I help my advisors do, they're small, right? We keep it to 10 to 12 people. But what I love about podcasting is you put the invitation out there, but nobody knows if nobody's chiming in. Right?
Yeah.
It's like having an empty room, but you're still getting the value. And you can hold these podcasts and reuse these podcasts. It's like an evergreen source of content. And some people want to listen to podcasts. Some people want to get your emails. Some people want to come to your events. So you're hitting the mark, and you can also I teach my advisors how to create a calendar of events.
Yep.
So 6 months out, and maybe you're hosting events too, and it's a really pretty calendar, and it's your most powerful marketing tool. And there's your podcast with your station.
The other thing too, Adri, with that is just visualize this. You're at the end of your workshop and people are super excited. They feel empowered, they feel educated, and you can say, some of you are going to end up doing business with us. Some of you will never talk to us again, but the majority of you will probably do this, which is subscribe to our podcast. So if everybody could just get their phone out real quick and go to iTunes and type in Femex Advisor and hit that subscribe button, what's going to happen is every once in a while, and I promise you it's not going to be annoying, every once in a while you will be notified that we came out with a new podcast, which is going to support all of the education that you came here tonight. So thank you very much for coming. If you do want to schedule an appointment, there it is. But we would love for you to subscribe to our podcast. Just saying, we have the most ridiculous success story very quickly. One of our he was brand new. In fact, he didn't even have a podcast released. And he's in a highly competitive market in New Jersey. And he was at a networking event and was really trying to get to this guy. And it wasn't really working very well at other times. And so he ended up somehow getting around him, and they just started striking up a conversation. And what he said was, I know everybody and their brother is trying to get appointments with you. I don't want an appointment with you. Would you just do me a favor? And would you listen to my podcast and give me feedback? And the guy was like, okay. So I just planted a great seed. I also gave you gave myself a great way to follow up with you without coming across as being salesy.
Yep. I think in the end, I would say that my tribal market are progressive advisors, right? Who love to be leaders, who love to lead the market. Progressive advisors recognize you cannot keep doing the same old thing. You must constantly incorporate the latest and greatest, and it's changing so fast. Podcast, we're still early in the podcasting. And we're still early in the women's market. When you combine those two, it's a powerful combination. But when I put my coaching hat on, do not set up a podcast until you know who you are, your core message, you have a story, and you have a brand, because you will minimize the impact of your podcast. There's no question about it.
Yeah. In fact, Adri, that's part of our discovery process. So thank you very much, by the way, for doing the role play with me. And by the way, you and I are going to spend some time offline. You need to deconstruct my entire sales process, but we'll talk about that later. But the fun part about it is I'm going to ask a lot of those questions. And if you don't have a brand, if you can't truly tell me what makes you unique and different, we do not take you as a client, because you're right. I want successful, happy clients. I want people to refer everybody and their sister to us. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be there. Okay. Closing thoughts. I'm going to open myself up here. What did you think about that? Because basically, for all of you listeners, I just took Adri through my freaking sales process. So if you ever wonder what it's like being sold by us, I don't know how salesy that was, but do you have any feedback for me now live on the air? I'm more than happy to hear it.
No, I don't. Well, I do have feedback, but I liked it wasn't salesy because you're really explaining it, right? But I think if I were to do anything different, I would focus more on all the advisor needs to do, and we do the rest.
Gotcha.
Right? So there's so much that Top Advisor does in this process, but it almost overwhelms me when I'm hearing everything you're doing. What I want to know is, what do I need to do? Gotcha. And there's so little. Yeah. And in the first month, you will have your first podcast done, a roadmap, a game plan, an agenda. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I like that. Yeah. Cool. Any suggestions on my coaching you? No. Oh my gosh. No. And I love it. I don't usually have the opportunity to ask questions like that, Adri. I don't, because, I either don't get the sale and then they don't talk to me, or they weren't a good fit. Right. Or, life gets in the way, or they become a client. And so, no, I really appreciate that. And it's funny because I had a client who signed up, 3-4 months ago. And that is one of the things that he ended up saying to me was, he said, Matt, you have to be more clear how easy this is for us. Yes. And he said, because this is about us, not you. Yeah. And what a great thing to close the podcast on. I want everybody to hear that once again. If you go through life realizing that it's freaking not about you, it's about who you're interacting with, not only will your practice grow exponentially, but you'll have better relationships, you're going to have a better life, and you're just going to overall be a happy person. So, Adri, thank you so much for role playing with me today. This was part number 2. We're going to have one more part, and the other part is going to be the super crazy part, because it's going to be how in God's name do we market all of this stuff. So, Adri, thank you for being on the show. You're welcome.
All
Thanks,
right.
Matt.
So everybody, make sure that if you didn't listen to part 1, you go back and listen to part 1, and also make sure that you stay tuned to part 3. We're going to be releasing these very, very close to each other so that you can get maximum benefit. So for everybody at FedMax Advisor, including our wonderful guest, Adri Miller-Heckman, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Are you ready to change the way you communicate with your clients? Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your area? Learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your business. Contact us today and see what the power of podcasting can do for your business. Click on the Contact Us link on our website at topadvisormarketing.com and set up a call to learn more. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook for more updates and information.
This was brought to you by Iris.xyz, a platform helping financial professionals become better in business and life through new media and new voices. Visit them and learn more at iris.xyz.